Hey, my name is Chris and welcome. It's been a little while since I've been on the old tube, so I just wanted to say that it's good to be back. So without further ado, let's get into the video. This is the case of Samantha Josephson. We need to go to South Carolina and to the capital city of Columbia, to be more precise. Columbia sits just to the northwest of the state's centre. With a population fast approaching 140,000, it's the second largest city in South Carolina. Bonus point for the first to name the largest. Columbia is widely considered to be a beautiful city with an abundance of history and heritage. It's home to the University of South Carolina, the state's largest and flagship public university. The Army's Fort Jackson.
I'm an American soldier. I am a warrior and a member of the team. I serve the people of the United States and live in all.
And one of its most visited tourist destinations, the South Carolina State House, home to the state's government. Soda City is affectionately known as by the locals. It's considered to be one of the best places to live in South Carolina. And it gets very, very hot during the summer, like really hot. Let's go back nearly 3 years, back actually to the spring of 2019. It was on the evening of 28th of March, almost a year before this damn virus, that 21-year-old University of South Carolina student Samantha Josephson was looking forward to a fun night out. Samantha hadn't been able to go out for a few weeks, as she was very excited at the opportunity to have a few drinks and laughs with her friends and her roommates. All during that day, she had been calling, texting and FaceTiming with her boyfriend, Greg Corbishley, a former USC student himself. He graduated the year before in 2018 with a degree in marketing. Greg and Samantha did pretty much everything together. They were always together and they were starting to build a future. At this particular time, Greg was away, about a 2-hour drive away. Greg lived further south in his family's home state of Charleston, while Samantha was living in one of the university's local accommodation buildings, is known as the Hub. There was nothing particularly unusual about this March day. Greg had been looking after his brother's dog, watching the big basketball tournament that was happening in Charleston at that time. Samantha had just shared with Greg some bad news that she had received about a family member's health, and Greg had actually been convincing Samantha that she should go out to help get her mind off of it, and that she deserved a good time out with her friends after working so hard at her studies, and she should celebrate. She'd just got into law school. She had a lot to celebrate. She should go out and enjoy herself. Samantha was born in Princeton in New Jersey. She grew up in nearby Robbinsville with her parents, Seymour, Mum Marcy and sister Sydney. She graduated from Robbinsville High School in 2015, and she was described as a best friend to everybody. Known as Sammy to her friends and her family, she was a very kind girl, kind of goofy, silly, very funny, super caring, and always smiling. Her father had actually nicknamed both of his girls Sweet Pea. Sammy was very passionate. She had big dreams of becoming a lawyer. She was now in her senior year at USC. She earned a major in political science, and she was just weeks away from graduating. In early 2018, she had spent a semester studying in Barcelona. She'd also travelled to Madrid and Paris, and she had recently earned a full scholarship to study international law at Drexel University in Philadelphia. It's safe to say that Sammy was an incredibly bright girl. She had the world at her feet. and she was ready to make a real difference to the world. So it was on this typical Thursday night in spring that Sammy and a group of her friends, they headed out to the busy and the thriving 5 Points district. It's an area located in downtown Columbia. It's very popular with the local university students. It's close by. It's got a large number of shops, restaurants, bars, and a good nightlife. You know the score. After stopping at another friend's house for a few drinks, Sammy and her friends they made their way to the Bird Dog Bar, which was nearby, and that's on Hardin Street. Arrived at about midnight. The bar they'd been to many times before. They were very familiar with it. In fact, they were pretty familiar with the whole 5 Points area, having spent the past 3 years there. And so they spent the next few hours in the bar, drinking, listening to music, sharing stories of their time at university, celebrating their upcoming graduation, just having a great time like a group of university students would be doing. And plus none of them had Friday class, and that was always a bonus. At some point during the night, Sammy became separated from the group, which was nothing unusual. Everyone would mingle, and at approximately 2 a.m, she decided that she would leave. She would go back to her apartment. You see, Sammy also, alongside her studies, she had a part-time job as a waitress, working at a local bar, just to earn a little bit of extra money on the side during her time at uni. Knowing that she had a shift the following morning at 11, Sammy was doing the responsible thing. She wanted to make sure that she got home at a reasonable hour to get some sleep before work. So she went ahead and she did what her and her friends had done countless times before. She pulled out her phone and she called for an Uber. Sammy can be seen here on security footage from the Bird Dog Bar, and she can be seen waiting outside. About 9 minutes later at 2:09 a.m, a silver car can be seen pulling up next to her. She approaches the vehicle, but the vehicle drives off. Moments later, another vehicle, a black Chevrolet Impala, can be seen approaching from the left. The vehicle pulls up right next to Sammy, and she gets in. Unbeknown to her, she had got in the wrong car. This was not her Uber, and the person driving certainly had no intention of driving her home safely. Throughout this particular day and evening into the night, Sammy had been talking with her boyfriend Greg. In fact, right up until 2:04, just 5 minutes before Sammy had got into that vehicle, Greg had spoken with her on the phone. For a large part of that day, continuing into the evening and the night, the two of them had been exchanging text, FaceTiming, and Sammy was trying so hard to persuade Greg to drive on up to Columbia. It was a heartfelt plea that Greg had succumbed to many times before. Many times he'd spontaneously made that 2-hour drive to be with his girlfriend. But on this particular occasion, Greg knew that he would be seeing his girlfriend in just a few days, for they had already planned together for Sammy to travel down to Charleston that weekend. Normally Greg would always make the journey to Columbia, so on this occasion they had arranged for Sammy to go and stay with Greg and see his family. And so, for that reason, Greg stayed at home that particular night, reminding Sammy that they would be seeing each other in a few days anyway. And so he stayed at home. However, aware that Sammy was about to take an Uber ride home on her own, Greg decided to track her movements just to make sure that she made it home safely to her apartment. It's something that he'd done before. Now, you're probably thinking, Chris, what do you mean track her movements? Well, you see, Sammy and Greg, they both shared their locations on a mobile phone app called Find My Friends, as did most of their whole friend group. Find My Friends, basically it provides a real-time location of your phone's GPS to anybody that you choose to share it with. Sounds pretty good, right? And so Greg started to monitor Sammy's phone, and he quickly noticed that something was kind of out of the ordinary. Something didn't seem quite right. Sammy's phone started to travel south, away from the direction of the hub. Greg had made that very same taxi journey many times himself, from the 5 Points area to the hub, and he knew that Sammy's phone should have been travelling in pretty much the opposite direction, should have been travelling north. So Greg began to think maybe they'd all decided to go to a friend's house or something, maybe there was a change of plan. So he decided he just dropped Sammy a text. There was no reply, and he couldn't help but notice that the read receipt on the message showed that Sammy hadn't read it. So he then tried to call Sammy, but there was no answer. So all he could do, he continued to track her phone until about 30 minutes later, sometime between 2:30 and 2:35 a.m, Sammy's phone stopped responding. It stopped responding in a residential area known as Rosewood, and it's just a few miles to the southeast from the Bird Dog Bar and 5 Points area. But Greg was no longer able to track Sammy's phone. It was no longer providing an update on its movements. So he began to think, well, maybe she's left her phone in the Uber. Maybe the Uber driver's gone home. Maybe she's lost the phone. Maybe she dropped it. So he called Sammy's friends, and also they said they could get no reply from her, and they kind of assumed the same thing as what Greg assumed. Maybe she left it in the Uber. They also used the Find My Friend app, and they had the same last known location of Sammy's phone as what Greg did. So they actually went out to that area in Rosewood, but they couldn't see or find anything. There was no sign of Sammy. Exhausted, Greg eventually fell asleep at around 5 a.m. Around 6 hours later, Greg was woken up with a call from one of Sammy's roommates. Sammy hadn't returned home that night. Still nobody could get hold of her. This was now totally out of character for Sammy. Greg got straight in his car. He drove to Columbia. Some of Sammy's roommates contacted her workplace to see if she'd shown up for work. She had a shift at 11. She hadn't arrived for a shift, neither had she called in sick. It also didn't go unnoticed that Sammy's work shoes were still out where she had left them the night before. So becoming increasingly worried, a couple of her roommates had managed to break into Sammy's laptop. In her emails, they found a report from Uber. Her booking had been cancelled by the driver. She hadn't shown up. So everybody agreed they should, at this point, let Sammy's parents know what was happening and that Sammy was not around. Her family also said they hadn't heard from her since the previous night. And at around 1:30 on Friday, March 29th, 2019, Samantha Josephson was officially reported missing, and the search for her began. One of the first things that Greg did when he arrived in Columbia was he went to visit the Rosewood area where Sammy's phone had last shared its location. Of course, Sammy's friends had already gone there. He began to knock on doors to see if anybody had seen or heard anything peculiar, but nobody had heard anything. He searched around the general area to see if he could locate Sammy's phone anywhere. Maybe she had dropped it in the grass, but there was no sign of her phone. He then met up with some of Sammy's roommates, and they decided they'd go and visit some of their local businesses in the 5 Points area to see if they had seen anything on security footage, anything that might give them a clue as to where Sammy may have gone, but there was nothing. That wasn't until they went back to the Bird Dog Bar on Harden Street, where her friends had last seen her. It was here that they saw with their own eyes the haunting footage of Sammy getting into that black Chevrolet Impala.
No light. That's creepy.
Yes.
Maybe. No light. That's creepy.
Yes.
It was a vehicle none of them recognised. In the state of South Carolina at that time, front number plates weren't a requirement, and so that's the only clue they had. The black Chevrolet Impala. So they passed this information on to the police, and a bolo was issued for any and all black Chevrolet Impalas in the area. 2.5 hours later, about 4 p.m, on that Friday, Sammy's body was found. A pair of turkey hunters had stumbled across her lifeless body. She was just lying in a secluded field. It was in the town of New Zion in Clarendon County, about 65 miles away from Columbia. Now, New Zion would actually become an integral part of the investigation for another reason, as you will see. Sammy had been dragged about 40 feet from a dirt road and just dumped there in the field like a piece of trash. Her orange top that she'd been wearing the night before was twisted, pulled up over her head. She had been stabbed to death. It would later be found more than 120 times, from the soles of her feet to her head. Of course, news of this would soon reach Sammy's devastated family and friends, and the search for Sammy's killer began. A little short of 12 hours later, so it's now 3 a.m. on Saturday, March 30th, a vehicle fitting the description of black Chevrolet Impala was pulled over no more than a couple of blocks from the 5 Points area and the Bird Dog Bar. The driver of this vehicle was 24-year-old Nathaniel Rowland, and for some reason he wasn't keen on staying around. All the police knew at this time was that the vehicle they had stopped matched the description of the vehicle that Suzanne was seen getting into. Although I'm sure the fact that Rowland tried to make a run for it probably might have slightly raised their suspicion. There was a strong smell of marijuana in the car, and the situation soon took a much more sinister turn when police began to look inside the vehicle. Inside they found a pink keychain and a set of keys. Down between the driver's seat and the passenger seat, a rose gold iPhone. Both of these were soon found to be Sammy's.
And this is on stage number 9 also? This is the body cam on stage number 9, is that right?
Yes.
This would have been when in relation to the foot chase?
After the fact, I returned to the vehicle.
Okay. The female standing there at the front, where did she come from?
She was in the front passenger seat.
Was she there during the traffic stop?
She was.
And what was her? So can you describe what you're doing currently?
Right there, seeing if I can identify the driver and the person who just ran from me, and then at the same time looking for the marijuana inside the vehicle.
You testified you found some shake.
Correct.
And can you say again what that is?
Shake is pretty much the ground up bits of marijuana that they use to put in cigarettes or to smoke it.
And where did you locate that?
On the floor, the driver's floorboard. Pretty much where your feet would be.
Your reference?
Those are.
and we haven't gotten to it yet, but where was the cell phone, the rose gold cell phone you spoke about, where was that located?
In between the driver's seat and the center console, in that little gap.
Is that the gap you were referring? You didn't examine the phone or do any forensics on it or anything like that, did you?
I did not.
Who would have been responsible for investigating the contents of that phone? Would that have been you or somebody else?
Somebody else, not me.
Not your area of expertise.
Not even close.
And this is, what are we looking at here?
The trunk is open, and that's when we discover more potential evidence in regards to the missing person. So that's trying to back up.
You see more blood?
There's more blood in the right there in the rear passenger seat. There's a backpack.
With that backpack, are you still trying to figure out the source of the odor of the marijuana?
That's correct.
And as you described a moment ago, that's the viewing of the trunk contents, correct?
Correct.
And that's the point where you guys decided what?
Make phone calls to our crime scene techs, and I believe select someone responded for the crime scene process.
Also in the vehicle they found a container of bleach, cleaning wipes, window cleaner, an assortment of cleaning materials. There were a number of what appeared to be bloodstains throughout the vehicle, on the sides of the front seats, in the trunk, and significantly on the back seats. Something clearly bad had happened here, and the officers soon discovered that Sammy's body had been found, and Roland was taken in. There was also a female travelling with Roland in the car at that time, though she was soon cleared of any involvement and was fully cooperative with the police. In fact, she wasn't the only girl that Roland was seeing at that time. Marie Howard was an ex-girlfriend of Roland's, whom he had reacquainted himself with just a few weeks prior when he turned up out of the blue at the McDonald's store where she worked. You know, Marie was like, "Whoa, where have you been? Where did you come from?" But they started to talk, and within a few days they had struck up a new relationship. Now, Roland was meant to be staying at Marie's house the night that Samantha disappeared. He had promised her that he would be there when she woke up. She didn't particularly like staying alone, but, you guessed it, he wasn't there when she woke up. He had left about 1:30 a.m. that morning and he didn't reappear until after 7. Now, if the evidence the police found in his car wasn't damning enough, the information brought forward by Marie Howard about Roland certainly was. Now, he'd not only promised to be there when Marie Howard woke up that morning, but he had also said that he would give her a lift to work. This, just to recap, this was the morning that Samantha disappeared. So Roland turned up at Marie's house late that morning. It was after 7, making her late for a shift. She was not happy. She had also left a McDonald's hat in the back window of Roland's vehicle, the black Chevrolet Impala, from the day before. She asked him about it. He said he didn't have it. He said it was in the country. When Marie pressed him further on this, asking him what he meant, he said it had blood on it, and he told her to mind her business. Marie also soon noticed the blood on the dash and on the seats. Back seats were covered in a sheet, and there were clearly signs of blood underneath it. She asked Roland if maybe he'd hit a dog. Have you hit a dog or something? And again, she was told to mind her business. Later on that day, Marie also witnessed Roland wearing nylon gloves and cleaning his car. He was dumping bags into the trash bin at the rear of her apartment, and there was a distinct smell of bleach inside the car. She also noticed that he was still wearing the same clothes from the night before, and they had blood on them. Roland then took a double-bladed multi-tool knife from inside his car and started cleaning that. This was later found to be the weapon with which prosecutors believe was used to murder Sammy. Marie had also noticed a rose gold iPhone in the car. She thought it was a bit odd, as it looked to be more like a female's phone, the colour. Roland offered to get the phone wiped for her so that she could use it. She preferred Android phones, so she declined. The next day, Marie saw on the news Suzanne was missing. She saw this girl missing, and she saw the images of the black Chevrolet Impala that law enforcement were looking for. Of course, things quickly started to dawn on her. Things started to make sense. She had also noticed blood on the rear fender of Roland's vehicle, and her young daughter had got blood on the bottom of one of her shoes after she had no choice but asked one of Roland's brothers to drive her and her daughter to a doctor's appointment. When police spoke with Marie, she claimed that she hadn't come forward earlier as she was basically too scared to do so. But she was quite happy to cooperate with the police, handed over her phone, let them search her apartment. Now, Marie Howard's apartment unearthed an abundance of further evidence. In the garbage bin at the back of her property, there were bagged up a number of bloodied items. Several sheets, a towel, cleaning wipes, nylon gloves, cleaning supplies, clothes belonging to Roland, an empty duct tape roll, and the same multi-tool knife that Marie had seen him cleaning. I think you get the picture. When agents searched the upstairs of Marie's home, they found a pillowcase on her bed with blood on it, and in a closet a child's shoe with blood on the sole. Fast forward 2 years, and in July of last year, 2021, a jury was shown the haunting images of Sammy waiting for that Uber ride home. Nathaniel Roland was actually caught on city security footage numerous times that night, appearing to circle the area where Sammy and her friends had been. This clearly wasn't a chance encounter. Roland had intentions that night. After a 7-day trial on the 27th of July 2021, Nathaniel David Roland was found guilty of Samantha Josephson's abduction, murder, and sentenced to life in prison. The case led to many discussions about the dangers of ride-sharing and the importance of ensuring that the driver of the vehicle is properly or properly registered prior to entering. During the trial, investigators detailed the horrifying events that followed. It's believed that as soon as Sammy got into the vehicle, Roland immediately activated the child locks, meaning that they could only be opened from the outside, effectively trapping Sammy inside the vehicle. At some point after driving off between Columbia and Clarendon County, where Sammy was found, in an apparent frenzied attack, Roland inflicted as many as 120 stab wounds to all areas of Sammy's body, using a two-bladed instrument. Mercifully, she was not sexually assaulted. The pathologist's report stunned the court, stating that due to the extreme number of wounds, an exact number of cuts could not be determined. There were simply so many. As Sammy desperately tried to defend herself, one strike had gone completely through her right hand. Her head was struck so forcefully the blade had pierced her skull. Now, the human body normally carries at least 4 litres of blood. Sammy's body contained just over 1 tablespoon. She would have died within 10 to 20 minutes of the ferocious and unrelenting attack, stated the pathologist. The avalanche of evidence against Roland was clear. Not only did they have the camera footage from the Bird Dog Bar and the testimony of his girlfriend at the time, Marie Howard, digital experts were also able to track his phone, travelling together with Sammy's phone until hers was switched off. Roland's phone then continued to travel that night all the way to New Zion, of all places, where Sammy's body was found. And get this, the field in which Clarendon County, where Sammy's body was found, just happened to be no more than a few miles from Roland's family home, where he had recently been living. Sammy's phone and keys, of course, were found inside his vehicle. A forensic expert revealed that there was very strong support that DNA found under Roland's fingernails belonged to Sammy and indicated signs of an intense and violent struggle. Experts also linked the blood in his car and on the suspected murder weapon, that dual-bladed multi-tool knife. They linked that to Samantha Josephson, along with blood found on cleaning items in Marie Howard's trash and clothes owned by Roland. Also, not long after Samantha's disappearance, later on that morning, there were 9 unsuccessful attempts to use her Wells Fargo bank card at 2 separate cash points by somebody fitting Roland's description and wearing the same apparent clothing and shoes that were found in the rubbish bin at the back of Marie Howard's house. Now, Roland actually pleaded not guilty to the charges against him, and his defence team argued that although Samantha appeared to fight back against her attacker, none of Roland's DNA was found on her body or under her nails, and there were no visible marks on Roland when he was arrested. The prosecution, with the help of experts, took time to explain that somebody fully clad in clothing with gloves on and no bare skin exposed could reasonably avoid transferring their DNA. I mean, it certainly looked like Roland was prepared that night, going by the discarded clothes and gloves that they found at Marie Howard's house, and going by the images of the person trying to use Sammy's bank card on that video. The defence ran with Roland's story, actually, that he had been at a party that night and he'd simply fallen asleep. At some point during the night, somebody stole his vehicle and returned it with the blood inside. Interestingly, nobody came forward to testify and support this alibi. He also had no reason, of course, as to why he didn't report his vehicle stolen and why it was covered in blood. The jury, who heard testimony from 31 witnesses, included Sammy's boyfriend Greg, her university friends, the turkey hunter who found Sammy's body, Marie Howard, the former girlfriend, forensic crime scene experts, and also a cell phone store owner who testified that Rowland had unsuccessfully tried to sell him Sammy's mobile phone the day after she had gone missing. Also, the genuine Uber driver that Sammy had booked, he spoke in court as well. Ultimately, the jury deliberated for just over an hour before their verdict was announced.
Madam Forelady, if you'll stand for me, please. Have you reached a verdict?
Yes, sir, we have.
Is it unanimous?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, if you will pass it up, please, and you may be seated. Defendant will rise. Madam Clerk, you may publish the verdicts.
Indictment number 2019 GS 40-2528, the state of South Carolina versus Nathaniel David Rowland. It's an indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. Read the jury find the defendant guilty. This is signed four-person juror number 130, July 27, 2021. Indictment number 2019 GS 40-2450, the state of South Carolina versus Nathaniel David Rowland. It's an indictment for murder. Read the jury find the defendant guilty. This is signed four-person juror. This is signed by the four-person juror number 130, July 27, 2021. Indictment number 2019 GS 40-2453, the state of South Carolina versus Nathaniel David Rowland. It's an indictment for kidnapping. Read the jury find the defendant guilty. This is signed four-person juror number 130, July 27, 2021. Madam four-person, are these your verdicts and the verdicts of the entire jury?
Yes, ma'am.
So you get the picture. The jury's verdict was unanimous. Nathaniel David Rowland was found guilty of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime, Samantha's kidnap and Samantha's murder. Samantha's mum Marcy then went on to read a 6-minute victim impact statement, speaking of her beloved daughter, followed by statements from Samantha's sister Sydney, father Seymour and boyfriend Greg.
Words cannot express the anguish our family and friends have endured since he kidnapped and brutally murdered Samantha. From the day I found out I was having Sammy, I was in love with her. As a mother, you worry and pray that your child will be safe, happy, and healthy. When she was sad, I was sad. When she was happy, so was I. Her dreams were my dream, and her death was my death. I close my eyes and I feel what she endured at his hands 120 times, over and over and over, fighting for her life, locked in his car. I used to have dreams for her. Now will I have her nightmares 120 times. The final moments, her bare feet kicking and fighting for her life. I visualize the blood flowing from her body, her beautiful body, 120 times for what? The $35 a college student has in her bank account? The loss of Sammy is beyond words. There'll be no more birthday parties, backyard gatherings, holiday celebrations, or activities to share with her. I was planning my trip to Columbia in 2019 to watch my daughter graduate from college. Instead, I went to Columbia to gather her belongings. I cannot watch my daughter graduate from law school, get married, or have children, all of which were her dreams. Her laughter, hugs, guidance, advice, and opportunities to tell her I love her are gone. Our family of four is forever broken. All I have are memories of the past and thoughts about what her final moments on earth must have been like. He erased my future with Sammy, but he cannot touch my memories. The excruciating pain he put her through is unimaginable. I pray that when Sammy closed her eyes, she thought of beautiful things. His evil face was not the last thing she saw before she took her last breath. I pray that her grandparents and uncle wrapped her in her loving arms. In 1 second, our lives changed. I miss her. Everything she touched was better because she made it so. The lessons she taught me as a mom are carried through me forever. She brightened up the day with her smile. The pain and loss are beyond words. He changed me forever. The heinous and brutal crime could have happened to anyone. Sammy was a reflection of everyone's child. Sammy had a bright future. She worked hard to accomplish her goals. She was kind and compassionate and would never hurt anyone. She did not prey upon others. I walked hand in hand with her throughout her 21 years. Her death sliced through my heart. Now I see sadness in ordinary days. I miss her heartfelt laugh. I am breathless and I want my Sammy. Such a heinous, vicious crime. Why? I spent the last 2 years asking myself that question. He cut out a piece of me. I'm bleeding silently. You don't see it. I try to move forward each day, but forever will be broken. One cannot explain the grief my family feels. There was no warning, no time to say goodbye, no time to tell Sammy all the things I would have wanted to say, no time to kiss her Kepala. We were thrown into this world of terror. My world is now incomplete. Nothing but memories can fill the emptiness of Sammy's passing. I miss her precious voice, her giggles and humor. I long to know that she closed her eyes and visualized her family in peace and not his face. I will never comprehend why he did what he did. I try not to dwell on how she died. Rather, I want to remember how she lived, but I'm not there yet. I had the gift of being Samantha's mother for 21 years. I despised everything about him. His eyes glaring at my family during the trial told me everything I already knew about him. He is pure evil. Samantha fought for her life because her life was worth fighting for. I wish I could gather the broken pieces of my heart. I am breathless. I want my Sammy. The ache that spreads throughout my body hurts more each day. I cannot fully express how it feels to lose a daughter. The ache, the longing, endlessly tearing me up inside. He's a monster, he's evil and pathetic. The excruciating pain he put my daughter through is unimaginable. I am shattered, angry, and heartbroken. His ruthless, violent act took a bright light out of my universe and changed many lives forever. He stole my beliefs. However, I pray every day. I pray that he feels Samantha's pain. I pray that he get what he deserves under the law. I pray that he never has a chance to hurt anyone ever again. Everyone has choices. He may not like them now, but it was his choice to kidnap and murder Sammy, and he will have to face the consequence of his choices. I ask the court, I ask your honor to impose the strictest sentence upon him so that he may never walk the streets as a free man again for the rest of his life.
Thank you.
This is Samantha's sister, Sydney.
Justice. That's all I can ask for at this point. After discussing my sister this past week,
A little louder, please.
after discussing my sister this past week and knowing nothing can bring her spunky self back except for justice, that's all that my family and friends and I want. Like most sisters, that's just the relationship we had, being spicy and going back and forth, knowing exactly how to push each other's buttons, made me laugh and cry. She made me remember not to take life too seriously. She was so funny without even meaning to be. With such plans for the future, her full ride to law school, and together we had plans to have kids that would grow close together, spend much time vacationing at our future beach house, and taking advantage of the life we thought we could have. Sammy always knew she was included with me and my friends, even when I didn't invite her. but always rallied along, and I loved spending time with her. I'm at a loss right now, and I can't even imagine how to put my emotions into words. Nothing will replace her, nothing I can say will bring her back, and nothing that I can say I know will ease my family's pain and heartache. Every day, having to go through the same thing over and over again, with being forced to recognize exactly how we lost her and how she will not be with us. No one should have to go through this stress and sadness that we all face on a daily basis, minute by minute. I ask this court, and I ask your honor, to impose the strictest sentence upon him so he will never have this opportunity to do this again to another person or family, or to walk the streets as a free man, because he certainly did not let my sister walk a free woman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Samantha's father, Seymour.
So, Judge, I have no idea how to get through this. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, so I apologize. I have a book here that was created from family and friends. In here are over 90 impact statements of friends and family of how they've been devastated for the last 28 months. I only wish that you read these, of how impactful it has hit my community, my friends, and my family. I have this here for you if you wish to read at any time.
Yeah, I do wish to read it. I'd love to, if you would hand it up, please.
I need glasses. I can't read off of a phone. It's too old for that. Thank you, Judge, for the opportunity to stand here and share with you the impact of losing my baby daughter, Samantha Josephson. I really don't know where to start or what to say. Do I stand here today and tell you that I've been an incredible amount of anger, an incredible amount of guilt, can't sleep at night. I don't want to go to sleep because all I do is start thinking of Samantha. I still, to this day, can't watch videos of Samantha. I hate looking at pictures. I have repeated nightmares and visions of him, the monster, stabbing her. I have visions of her foot on the back window. I have visions of her screaming and fighting. I have visions of her taking her last breath. I have such hatred running through me. I still, to this day, can't believe she is gone. I keep waiting for her to walk through the door, saying, "Hey," only the way she does. I had this guilt of her not coming home that weekend to visit Rutgers Law School. The weekend prior, we were at Drexel Law School, where she had a full scholarship, and Rutgers was only offering 60 or 70%. I just told her that she would be fine at Drexel Law School, and not to bother with Rutgers. So over money, I told her not to. And Drexel was great, and it'd be a free ride. With all this guilt and anger and rage and hatred, do I tell you that this is real? Has this really affected me? Do I really share with you my deepest in secrets? Do I tell you that I've contemplated suicide? Several times over the past 28 months. He, the monster, has stolen this bright light, this enthusiasm of life out of me. I try to tried to stop having these thoughts or desires only because I'm afraid of what this would ultimately do to Sydney and Marcy. I know I have changed so dramatically that it's actually bad to put into words. People always ask, how are you doing? My answer is, I'm upright, or I'm living the dream, or the nightmare. I stand here before you for Marcy, Sydney, Samantha, to make sure justice is served for Samantha. I would tell you, Judge, for the first 2 years, I didn't even know his name. I never wanted to hear his name, or I still don't want to know or hear his name. I stand here for the last week in bewilderment, asking, how in the world did we get here? Why does he, this animal, have any rights? How is it okay for him to go over to his family freely during breaks, unchanged? Why does he have this right? With an avalanche of evidence, while the family and friends sit here in such pain, wishing and wanting to have our Samantha back. But no, with 120 wounds and stabbings, you or anyone cannot bring her back. But we have him walking and talking to his family freely. It kills me to witness this. I often think of Sammy or go to call her. As a matter of fact, until recently, we still had her cell phone active, so I could call or text her. A lot of the times I think of Sammy sitting on the couch, looking at my 2 favorite pictures of Sam and one of Sydney and Sam together. She is such a beautiful person, inside and out. Samantha was to graduate that spring of 2019 from the University of South Carolina. She was going to attend Drexel Law School on a full scholarship in Philadelphia. She wanted to help others and fight for people's rights. Samantha was one of the kindest, light-hearted, funny people you would have met. Obviously, she trusted too many people. Just recently, last week, I received an email from one of her freshman 101 professors. She mentioned how funny and bright-hearted she was, how memorable she was, how she was the bright light and stood out with her class. Can I get a drink? Sorry. We would sit on the couch in the family room and just talk about everything, from politics to the world. She would listen, ask questions, digest it, and then give her opinions. Sammy would call me late at night to talk about the news, the world, or anything. Both of my kids knew or know how to wrap me around their fingers. Each of them are different, but know how to sucker me in. I knew or know this, but I would laugh. I knew or know know this, but I would laugh and smile and always say yes. Samantha always knew I would say yes and to buy them whatever. I have to say, I miss and ache for that. That night of her kidnapping and murder, she called me about using my credit card because supposedly hers didn't work with Uber or a Lyft. I said, really? But okay. I often find myself alone and not wanting to be around anyone. I force myself to go out or be around people. I've had a bad time putting up with people and their BS, so I've eliminated some people and their negative personalities. I just don't care anymore. We started a foundation in Samantha's honor. Part of my responsibilities is to go around and speak to groups, colleges, businesses on rideshare safety, and they always ask, how do you do this? I would just answer, no clue. But not doing this for a while, I looked back and thought about it. It was cathartic. I was keeping Sammy around me, with me, and not letting anybody forget, not even him, to take this from me. I won't let him. Someone always asks me, what was Samantha like? The only way I can best describe Samantha is when we were at the vigil in South Carolina, and some of her friends and sorority friends got up to speak. All of them described Samantha as a person who lit up a room, always smiling and laughing, always a great friend, and lit that room up when she entered it. When we got back to Robbinsville, approximately 6 or 8 of her friends got up to speak at the vigil. Each one said that Sammy was her best friend. And some could not get up to speak. That, to me, is a true testament of how great she is. Even to this day, the lasting impression and feelings she had or has on them. I look at my wife, and she's not even close to being the same. I have lost a huge piece of her, along with Samantha. Every day, I look at her and only wish I could do something to take that pain away. Her memory, laughter, her ease of life, her flame that burns inside is way down. My Sydney, she lost her best friend, her confidant, her baby sister. She is who I worry the most about moving forward. Sammy was a gaffer, talked a lot. Sid is tight-mouthed and keeps a lot in. In the end, you have taken my baby away. I will never see her graduate from college, law school, walk her down the aisle, and get married, to see the children, the grandchildren, all the milestones that one would normally experience if an animal or a monster did not take them away from us. And for what? What did you get from Sam? $10? $20? He took her life. Only an animal or monster does that. Judge, I only wish we could inflict the same or more pain he inflicted upon Sammy. Please, I beg you, please, give him life and never see the light.
Thank you.
Hi, Gregory Corvishley. I'm Samantha's boyfriend. I don't have anything written prepared today. All all I can say is that I've pictured this day for 28 months. The sleepless nights, the constant night terrors, even waking up all the way down the hallway from where my bed is because I'm such an active sleeper now. Constantly paranoid, constantly afraid. Samantha's parents and her sister have shared with me that they lost a piece of themselves. I lost the love of my life that day. I'll never forget the last words that I spoke to her that night when she was with her friends. As I said before, I told her to enjoy the night. She deserved it. She'd just gotten into law school. Couldn't be more excited for what she had in front of her. What sticks with me to this day, and it's what he took from me. She said to me, you are my person. And to me that represents, that we wanted to spend the rest of our life together. I had my plans to move up to Philly with her, to be close to her, to spend time with her, and we were going to tackle life together. Your Honor, this girl that I wanted to marry, I will never find a love like that ever again. And it's because of the defendant standing right there. He took all that from me, and the constant anguish and sadness that I see this family and everyone here that you see behind me, and even more, the pain that they have to endure every day, the texts that I get at 3 a.m. that someone's afraid to get into their Uber. They call me to sit on the phone with them until they get home. That constant paranoia that's instilled in them every day because of this man, and probably many other young females and males out there as well that are out drinking and just trying to have a good time. I just reiterate all that he's taken. You've seen the sadness this week and last week. I would ask for the strictest sentence possible. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Nathaniel Rowland's mother and father spoke. His father has actually suffered a stroke since his son was arrested.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state have accused our son of a crime that he didn't commit.
Ma'am, I'm not going to hear any claim of innocence.
Okay.
He's been convicted by the jury.
Okay. He's a very caring young man. This is a young man who went through high school, college, played ball, active in his church, never had anything against him. Now I know as a mother, and a mother knows her child, I know my son didn't do this. I know.
How do you know that?
Sir?
How do you know that?
By the way I raised him.
Pardon?
By the way I raised him. And when you're a mother, and you're a truly good mother, and you raise your child in the right way, you would know when that child had done something or did something right or wrong. I can't. And I know he didn't do this.
No, I'm not going to hear any claim of what he did or didn't do.
Yes,
he is guilty of murder. He's guilty of kidnapping.
Yes,
he's guilty of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. And if you had any testimony. Yes, sir. You can remain seated if you want to. You can stand or sit.
I'm Henry Rowland. I'm the Daniel Rowland's father. Now, Judge, I got 4 different kids beside Nathaniel. And believe me, I went through all the schooling from kindergarten to college, and I was right there. I never seen any backbone in his blood. He always been a determined child, all through his life. Now I can't tell you what happened. I don't know what happened. But I know deep down in my heart, that young man, he didn't do this. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for Miss Josephson's family. I am so sorry for her family. I know what they're going through, because we go through the same thing, because we cherish our children. But I pray and hope that you be as lenient as possible with the evidence that was presented. And, that's all. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Finally, it was left to Judge Clifton Newman to deliver the sentencing.
Mr. Rowland, during my time on the bench, I have presided over many murder trials, and they typically involve shootings. And with what seems to be an epidemic of criminal activity now, on a monthly basis, we encounter people accused of murder, people convicted of murder. This is the first time, however, that I've presided over a case where a victim was stabbed 120 times. The last case I participated in, where a victim was stabbed and tortured, resulted in a jury imposing the death penalty, which in this state is defined as murder accompanied by aggravating circumstances. And certainly a kidnapping is an aggravated circumstance. And I hear a lot of mothers tell me what a good child their child is. And quite often I have to unfortunately tell the same mothers and fathers that your child was a good child. But that's when he was a child. And my heart goes out to the Rowland family, as well as the Josephson's family. My heart goes out to someone from the same part of the state that I am from. You participate in sports, and at East Clarendon, I presume you played basketball against C.E. Murray, did you? My high school. So I take no joy whatsoever. When I looked at the map that was shown to the jury, the telephone towers, when the officer or witness testified that there's another tower over here, the map showed that that tower is in King Street, where my chambers are. So this is painful, but not nearly as painful as the suffering by the Josephson family. Is there anything you would like to say?
Your Honor, I know I'm innocent. But I guess what I know and what I think really doesn't matter. I just wish the state would have done more in finding out who the actual person was, instead of being satisfied with detaining me and proving my guilt. I feel like if they would have done further research in certain areas, that's all, Your Honor.
And I've sentenced a number of murderers, many of whom have confessed, and I asked them, tell me about the murder. Tell me about the time you pulled the trigger. And I have yet to have one who could go back there. Everyone, each of them, have blotted the whole thing out of their mind as if it never occurred. And they can't take their mind back there sufficient to tell me. And I imagine they live in torment the rest of their days because they can't. The evidence in this case was, I chose the word an avalanche of evidence, and now I've seen it repeated a few times. I've heard it repeated. But the evidence in this case was so overwhelming. The law enforcement in this case did the best job of investigating a case that I have seen over the past 30 or 40 years. Every law enforcement officer that was available participated, apparently, in working in this case. And if there were 1,000 roads, each road led to you. There's 1,000 trails, each trail led to you. All of the evidence, every speck of the evidence, not simply beyond a reasonable doubt, but as high a standard as the law requires, all points to your guilt. And I am absolutely satisfied. I can certainly understand the family being in total disbelief that the child that they raised could do such a heinous thing, could commit such a murder. And I have dealt with the heartless, and you fall into that category. A person without any remorse whatsoever. A person who is totally emotionless. And in the law we call it a depraved heart. And it would be absolutely astonishing, amazing to me for the truth to be that you have engaged in this activity all of a sudden. That there are not signs that your family can point to, that your friends can point to, where if some intervention had taken place, this young lady would have been protected. I don't know that. But as much as your mom feels in the bottom of her soul or pit of her stomach about you, I feel that same thing based on my experience and based on my observing you and witnessing the evidence in this case. So I want to thank the jury for your focus on this case. I noticed that you all were totally engaged and tuned. Thank you very much on behalf of the citizens of Richland County and the citizens of the state of South Carolina. And South Carolina is a wonderful state, a lovely place, and people from all over the country, particularly the Northeast, choose South Carolina because of its beauty and charm and people, and Columbia for all of the same reasons. Because we live in such a wonderful state, such a diverse state, where there are opportunities for everyone, and certainly opportunities for you. And for you to have attended South Carolina State University, if your parents have given you as much as they gave you, and for you then, your life story to end right here at this point in time. Of course, your life story doesn't end, but this is certainly a stop along the way. It is a tragedy. And whatever tragedy that causes these demons to reside within your soul and spirit, I don't know. Maybe at one point in time, since this is not a death penalty case, they can be exorcised out of you. Mr. Goldberg made his closing argument and talked about, in the end, the consequences that would have had to exist in order for this not to be you. That someone would have had to steal your car, steal your car keys, kidnap Samantha, kill her with your tool, then bury her in your home territory, then miraculously get the car back to you in time for you to go to the ATM in Sumter and here in Columbia. Then turn over your car back to you with all the blood throughout it, all of Samantha's blood except for several teaspoons. And the story goes on and on. The evidence is so substantial in this case, pointing to your guilt. And I emphasize that and re-emphasize it because of the horrific and most brutal nature of this crime. It could not be worse. It's the most severe murder that has occurred that I have been a witness to as far as presiding in court or participating in as a lawyer. And for whomever asked me for leniency, that's not part of my DNA. I have two daughters, one of whom sit in this seat more often than I do, and another of whom live in a city who have to encounter people on a daily basis. And I have sons. I would like to think I know my sons and my daughters very well. Certainly, I would be in disbelief if any of them were to find themselves standing in a spot like you. But even more so, the terror imposed on their child and the pain and grief that you have caused. she was an amazing person, an amazing human being. And the testimony is here. And she obviously put up an amazing fight against you and left a sufficient trail for the jury to see what you did. Now, you're not a dumb person. You're not an unintelligent person. You've been educated, trained, and you have a degree of intelligence. You certainly have the ability to choose a different course. But there's no perfect crime. These days, with forensic evidence, your whole 24 hours was recreated almost minute by minute, mile by mile, digit by digit. That's led you here, and you've now been found guilty. And sentencing in this case is not difficult. The sentence in this case is easy, though painful it may be. The sentence of the court for murder is that you be committed to the State Department of Corrections for life. Any other sentence that can be imposed will be concurrent with life. Since you only have one life, that sentence must be served for the remaining days of your natural life. That's the sentence of the court. If you remove Mr.
I really like that judge. I love that judge. So just what drove Nathaniel Rowland to commit such a heartless and depraved crime against a young, innocent girl? Only he will know. A young girl just out having a fun time with her friends, doing nothing but celebrating her upcoming graduation. An incredibly bright, intelligent girl about to start her life, and her life was taken away for what? I suppose that's a question only he can answer. So far he's shown zero remorse. Still to this day he claims his innocence. According to his Facebook page, Rowland was originally from Brooklyn, New York. It's not known when he moved to South Carolina, but he had studied at East Clarendon School in a place called Tuberville, near New Zion, and he was a keen basketball player. He attended South Carolina State University actually in 2017, but the school's chief of staff confirmed that in 2019 he was not a student there at the time that Samantha was killed. No outright motive for the killing was suggested by prosecutors during the course of the trial. The prosecution claimed that it was absolutely a random act of violence, and that's one of those questions that Rowland would have to answer at some point in time. However, if we look at his one past felony arrest, we do start to get an idea of maybe what happened and why. Nathaniel Rowland is actually linked to a reported kidnapping and carjacking incident that happened in October 2018. No charges were ever filed. However, Rowland was charged with obtaining property under false pretenses, property that was tied to that carjacking. A woman reported that she was in her car and stopped at a traffic light in Hickory Street in Columbia when she was assaulted by two men. Upon researching this street, I found that it just happens to be in the Rosewood area and very, very close to where Sammy's phone had been switched off. The alleged victim told police that the men told her to count to 100 or they would kill her. They said, "We're going to let you go, but you have to remain calm." The men took her vehicle against her will while she was still inside, and they demanded money. They then drove to an ATM and then went on to the woman's house where they stole several items, including a Sony games console. The woman said it was a crazy situation. They threatened to kill her, her mum, and even her cat. Now, Roland was caught when he tried to pawn that Sony games console and other items that had been stolen. The woman was shown a picture of Roland. She claimed that she only saw the face of the man who held her down in the back seat and that was not him. But she did believe that Roland was the driver. Taking his recent past into consideration, I mean, the details of that incident, it's reasonable to assume that Roland went out that night in March 2019 with the intent to act out something similar, and Sammy was the unfortunate victim who was lured in. Maybe Sammy put up far more of a fight than he had ever expected. Maybe he had built up a sick desire to murder. I mean, it's only something he will know the answer to. But ultimately it was a heartless, evil, vicious attack against a young, defenceless girl trapped in the back of his vehicle, desperately trying to kick her way out. And a footprint was actually found matching Sammy's on one of the back windows, the inside of one of the back windows. Only he knows exactly what happened in that vehicle that night. Maybe one day he'll explain everything, I don't know. But in the wake of Samantha Josephson's murder, the family have channeled their grief into raising awareness of the dangers associated with ride-sharing apps. Lobbying for changes in law, they've worked closely with lawmakers to successfully enact new US legislation in the hope that they might prevent more families from experiencing what they've had to go through. Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for making it to the end. And I hope to see you in the next video.